For all the changes in our world, kids still pass out Valentine's Day cards at school. I was glad to see that. Madeline came home from school with a bag full of Valentines, which she showed me, along with a little race car a boy had given her, scotch tape to the card he presented her. Apparently, nothing says love like a race car. She liked the card, but told me the boy was naughty, that he colored outside the lines in art class on purpose, even after the teacher asked him not to. Just another example of kindergarten thuggery. And yet, on Valentine's Day, this young man rose to the occasion and parted with a cherished toy to convey his appreciation for my granddaughter. He may color outside the lines, but that boy has a bright relational future. Several weeks ago, we watched a TED Talk about the Harvard study on adult development and learned that the key to good lives were good relationships. So we've been reflecting on the characteristics of good relationships. Let me just go over where we've been very quickly. We've said in good relationships, we allow others to be their authentic selves while at the same time being our authentic selves. If someone's authentic self is repulsive to us, that's a good clue. We might not want to be in relationship with them. We don't wish them ill. We still want the best for them, but we don't engage them in a deep relationship. And then we said good relationships tend to be positive, optimistic, and aspirational. And last week, Laura J. Ballinger spoke eloquently and powerfully about the importance and moral imperative of good anger. Today on Valentine's Day, it seems appropriate to add romance to our list of characteristics of good relationships. Romance. And though we have customarily associated romance with sexual passion, today I invite you to consider another aspect of romance, and that is thoughtfulness. Thoughtfulness. Long after the fires of sexual passion have cooled, long after our hormonal levels have subsided and our genetic instincts to reproduce have quieted, there is a dimension of romantic love that is rooted in thoughtfulness and consideration for the beloved. For what is true romance but the daily commitment to honor another with our kindly attention? When I was in college, I worked a number of part-time jobs, and one of them was working in a nursing home in the social services department. It was my job to assess the social well-being of each resident every 3 months, write a report, and then insert it into the resident's file. A woman lived there who'd had a stroke and was unable to feed herself. She was in her early 60s, not much older than I am now. After her stroke, her husband took early retirement and every day arrived at the nursing home before breakfast and stayed until supper was over and his wife was in bed, feeding his wife each meal, a spoonful at a time, holding a straw up to her lips so she could drink, changing her diaper and keeping her clean, brushing her hair, dressing her. He did this day after day, week after week, month after month. The day to evaluate her social well-being rolled around, so I started by looking at the previous assessment I had made 3 months before, in which I had written words to the effect that the resident had few prospects for a meaningful life. I note that she could barely move, that her speech was unintelligible. But that day I walked into her room to find her husband seated in the chair beside her bed, holding up a picture album from when they'd first married and their children were babies. And her face was lit up with joy. It now occurs to me 35 years later that it was the most romantic moment I've ever witnessed. For what is true romance but the daily commitment to honor another with kindly attention, thoughtfulness, and consideration? I have a friend whose marriage I knew to be a bit rocky. Whenever I was around him, he would be negative about his wife. And then whenever his wife was around me and he wasn't present, she would be negative about him. I didn't think they were at risk of divorce, but it was obvious they weren't happy with each other either. And then one day I saw them holding hands, and it kind of surprised me. The next time I saw my friend, I said, "Well, I see you and your wife are holding hands. What happened?" And he kind of chuckled and he said, "Well, I stopped sitting on my chair watching television and started helping with the cooking, cleaning, and laundry." Thoughtfulness and consideration. I don't want to denigrate the importance of chocolate roses. I've depended upon them often in the course of my marriage. But I also know the importance of daily loving kindness, of thoughtfulness and consideration. I love the opening words of the Quaker marriage ceremony, how they capture so perfectly this spirit of consideration. Listen to these words that Quakers have said for centuries now for our weddings. Marriage involves at once the highest privileges and the greatest responsibilities of life. Its achievement of happiness and success is dependent upon the mutual love, the unfailing patience, and the absolute fidelity of one to the other. You will from henceforth live a blended life, each seeking and promoting the joy and the comfort, the health and the enrichment of the other, all of which will divide your sorrows and multiply your satisfactions. What lovely words. This is the heart of romance, seeking and promoting the joy, the comfort, the health, and the enrichment of the other. Now, of course, I know not all of us are married, but it seems to me that thoughtfulness and consideration are not the exclusive purview of married people. In all our relationships, we are called to be caring and kind. Too often in our hypersexual culture, too many people have felt free to make sexualized comments to others with whom they have no relationship. This is always inappropriate. It isn't flattering, it certainly isn't romantic, and it's neither thoughtful nor considerate. It is, in a word, creepy, especially since it often involves an older, more powerful person preying on a younger, less powerful person. Our Quaker faith rightly condemns all language and activity that objectifies or humiliates another. I remember when I graduated from high school and started working at Public Service Indiana in a department there. There was a woman in there, an older woman in the department in which I worked, who sexually harassed me nearly every day. for the 4 years, 5 years I worked there. It was demeaning, it was embarrassing, and eventually was one of the reasons I quit. It wasn't romantic, it wasn't sexy, it was disturbing and cruel, and I knew of no option but to leave. I can't imagine how young women feel when they are preyed upon like that. This is why in all of our relationships, and especially in our marriage relationships, we seek always to be thoughtful, considerate, and kind, knowing those are not only the hallmarks of true romance and enduring love, but also the basis for all good relationships. So this week, friends, I wish you good relationships based in mutual kindness and consideration. Happy Valentine's Day.
Bill, I wanted to say thank you for your openness with your story. I'm sorry that happened to you at your workplace. I know that happens to a lot of people, but I'm glad you're in a good relationship. Um, I really wanted to think about, reflecting on how the Quakers have stood up for marriage equality through the years, where other denominations um, have failed in that regard. I know not all Quakers believe in that, but those that do have been able to stand aside. So I really, that means a lot for me in my marriage. So yeah, thank you.
Josiah, you're welcome, and many blessings to you, friend, and much happiness in your marriage. So, friends, may all of our relationships be marked with loving kindness. And may days like this, when we celebrate our relationships, serve to remind us of the centrality and importance of love, not just in marriage, but in our family relationships, especially when they're difficult, and our relationships with friends and neighbors, especially when they're difficult. May we always choose the way and path of love and kindness, saying to ourselves, insofar as it depends upon me, I will act in love toward all the world. This is our prayer.